Hello and welcome to the penultimate video in the March Matters series. So today's video is all about how to nail communicating by email, because you will have probably remembered from one of the other videos that when communication matters, when a conversation is important to you, my advice is always look and see whether you can arrange to have the conversation in person. If not, can you have the conversation over the phone? And if neither of those options are available to you, then you'll have to write the message or the piece of information you want to share. And I always promote eyes, voice, fingers. Where you can, have the conversation eyeball to eyeball. If you can't do that, at least pick up the phone, very good at miming today, so that you can have the conversation. At least they can hear the tone of your voice, even if they can't see you. And if neither of those are an option, you have to use your fingers to type it. And I have lots of clients who tell me that email communication they find tricky, because people don't seem to take notice of written communication and they don't respond to their emails. So there are a few things that I would encourage you to consider when it comes to making sure that your communication is as impactful as possible when it is in the written form. And a lot of these tips, they will translate just as efficiently into text messages, WhatsApp, Messenger, any form of communication where you are writing instead of speaking. But here's the thing, let's focus on email communication, because if you could nail this, your work life or those formal moments of communication would probably feel much easier. So the first thing and most important thing I'd love you to know and remember when you write instead of speak is that the tone of your written piece of communication will be dictated by the mood of the reader, not the mood of the writer. So whoever reads your email will read it in the mood that they are in the moment that they read it. They will not be able to translate the mood you were in when you wrote it. So therefore you might think you can create an email which is upbeat and straightforward and doesn't have any negative connotations at all. If the person reading your email feels upbeat, with no agenda, they've not had a bad day, they will probably read it and translate it in exactly the same mood. If, however, you've written it in an upbeat manner, but when they come to read it, they're having a dreadful day and they are in a very negative or a frustrated or an angry place, I can guarantee that in reading your email, they will read it in exactly the mood they are feeling, not the mood you wrote it in. So therefore, we need to do what we can to mitigate the risk of the tone of our emails being misunderstood. And there are a few things that you can do. The first thing that you can do is spend a moment before you craft your email to think about the person that's going to read it. So just profile them for a few seconds. Who are you writing the email to? What's going on in their world at the moment? What do they actually want to know from you? What questions might they have about it? And how do you want them to feel when they read it? So put yourself, before you start writing your email, into the recipient's chair and think, I could tell them all sorts of things, but actually with everything that's going on in their world at the moment, what do they want to know? What will help them? What will serve them? And how do I want them to feel? So think about your audience. The second top tip would be to use whole sentences. If you can't predict the mood of the reader, then you can remove some of the ambiguity, some of the confusion, and some of the doubt over what it is you're actually saying if you use full sentences, no abbreviations, because it stops you from making assumptions that they know exactly how you feel when you're writing it. The third thing would be to make the purpose of your email clear. What are you actually writing this for? And whatever you want to achieve in the bulk of your email, put it in the opening paragraph. I'm writing to confirm that I'd like to accept the estimate that you sent me. I'm writing to let you know that I won't be able to attend your event on Tuesday the 20th of February. I wanted to reach out and raise a question with you about the course that I'm currently on. I'm writing to express my dissatisfaction at the customer service I experienced last week. Tell them what you're writing about in that first sentence. Because again, remember, your audience will be reading that email through two filters. Is this relevant to me, and is this interesting to me? The first sentence will allow them to focus if the content is relevant or interesting, or hopefully both, to them, and will make sure that you don't bore them by the time they get halfway through your email and then you make your point and they've lost interest by then. So tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them it, and then in the last paragraph or the last sentence, tell them what you just told them. Because if someone's going to skim an email, they're going to skim read the first sentence, few lines in the middle, and the last sentence. So those are your key opportunities. Tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them the thing, and then tell them what you just told them. So use long sentences, profile the reader so that you can make sure your content is fit for purpose. Don't shorten your sentences or use abbreviations or make assumptions. Use long sentences, full sentences to convey your point if you can, and be clear to state your purpose in the opening sentence and reiterate it again as you're closing that email. The other thing I would suggest is that you reduce the words you use, because we don't get into the flow of writing an email until we're in the middle of it. And if you get to the bottom, you think, actually, I'm happy with that, send. The chances are, if you had just walked away from the email and then come back to it with a fresh pair of eyes a few hours later, you would realise that the first half is a bit waffly. So I always advise my clients to write an important email and go away. Take a moment, step away from it, and then come back and see how many words they can remove. Because in most instances, you can reduce 30% of the words without losing 1% of its impact. Shorten the sentences where you're saying the same thing twice. Leave out all of the blurby introductions where you're warming up into a sentence. Just keep to the point and lose the waffle. So challenge yourself. Are there long words that you could replace with short words? Are you saying the same point twice, in which case remove a whole sentence? Reduce the number of words where possible. And then the next thing that I would encourage you to do is to make sure that when you read back through your email content, you're not over exaggerating, you're not over promising, you're not being over enthusiastic about what it is you're offering or saying, and that there's not too much emotion in there. Because it's very hard to convey emotion in the way that you'd want to if you were speaking to somebody personally. And when we try and convey the same amount of emotion in an email, it kind of amplifies. It kind of challenge yourself not to be too emotional. Try not to overpromise, to be over enthusiastic, and to be too emotive in the language that you use. And then the last point I would make is to own the next step. Sometimes we reach out business to business in a really important email, and then we say, so if you'd like to discuss this further, please don't hesitate to contact me. Well, you are giving permission to the other person, the recipient, to take the next step. That's out of your control. With written emails, you want to try and retain control of the conversation, even if it's in writing, as much as you can. So instead of giving control to them, retain your own control. So at the end of an email, say, I hope that you will look forward to having an opportunity to discuss this further. I will call your office next week to arrange an appointment to make this happen. Or, thank you for taking the time to read this. I will be ringing you next Wednesday to book an appointment in the diary. You own the next action, which allows you not to fall into that trap of ambiguity afterwards where, oh, I know they got the email, but they haven't responded. Do they hate it? Do they hate me? Are they not interested? 101 thoughts go through your mind at that moment. Own the next action, and then you can deliver on that. And then the very last thing is to remember to let go of the reaction of the recipient. You can't control the way they react to your email. It's just simply not within your gift. You can't control it. Your email is an attempt to influence it, and if it doesn't end up the way you wanted it to, you have no option than to accept the outcome for what it is. But remember that communication and connection happens in a series of bite-sized chunks. So your email isn't the be-all and end-all of a relationship. It's not the be-all and end-all of rapport creation, and it's not the be-all and end-all of your success. It's a tiny little bite-sized chunk piece of communication. So marry the process of building the relationship and maintaining rapport and divorce the result. Marry the process of communication and divorce the result. Their reaction is not within your gift. So those are my top tips. I've got to remember them all now. So my top tips are, where possible, eyes, voice, only then, to use fingers, to profile the recipient of the email first, because it is really important to remember that your email will be read in the mood of the reader, not the writer. Profile them first. What do they want to know? What's going on in their world? How do you want them to feel at the end? And then tell them the purpose of your piece of communication in the first sentence. Tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you just told them. Use full sentences. Don't use abbreviations and make assumptions. That way you don't have any ambiguity in there. Don't overpromise. Don't use too much emotion, and don't over-exaggerate what it is you want to do or what you ought to do. And then own the next step, the outcome. You're the one that's going to reach out. You're the one that's going to be in touch. You're the one that's going to send up a follow-up piece of communication. And then lastly, but by no means least, marry the process of communication and divorce the result, which is their action. That, and cutting out as many words, I forgot that one, cut about 30% of your words out, and you should have the best effort at communicating through email possible. I hope you found that useful. I will see you in the next video, which will be the very last video in the March Matters series. Okay, bye for now.